If you're new to Metal Gear Solid 2, you probably don't know about this one setting found in the options menu that can help you significantly with pulling off some pretty advanced tactics. You also probably don't know just how advantageous Snake's role can be if it's used correctly. Don't worry, you're going to learn about both of these things and much more in this video. However, before we get into talking about how to play MGS2 like a pro, let's talk a little bit about MGS1. While this might seem painfully obvious to most, a lot of Metal Gear newcomers that I've come across actually decided to skip the first Metal Gear Solid due to its aging graphics and complicated and sometimes cumbersome control scheme. Metal Gear Solid and the Shadow Moses incident are essential to fully understand and appreciate Metal Gear Solid 2. By playing through Metal Gear Solid first, you also help yourself establish the basic building blocks in terms of gameplay mechanics for the rest of the series. You will learn things such as how to distract guards using your surroundings, how the auto-aim weapon firing system works, basic melee attacks, and the tactical reload, all of which are still present in Metal Gear Solid 2. If you are someone who has tried to get into Metal Gear Solid in the past and struggled with the very first game, I would highly recommend going back and giving it another try. There is no shame in bringing the difficulty down to easy or even very easy if you're playing through Integral, which by the way is included in the Master Collection. On that same note, keep in mind that there are other versions and options available to you when it comes to experiencing the very first Metal Gear Solid game. The Twin Snakes is a remake of Metal Gear Solid that released for the Nintendo GameCube. It utilizes the same engine as Metal Gear Solid 2, which means its graphics might be easier to stomach over the original. It also borrows gameplay mechanics from Metal Gear Solid 2, meaning things such as firing weapons from first-person view and performing a role are possible. The Twin Snakes is a decent option for those who just cannot get through the original Metal Gear Solid and have a means to actually play the Twin Snakes. Just keep in mind, if you are choosing to go down this route, there are quite a few differences between Metal Gear Solid and the Twin Snakes in their presentation, story, and gameplay. Another option available to you as part of the Master Collection is the digital graphic novel of Metal Gear Solid. This is a fully animated and voice-acted movie drawn in Ashley Wood's iconic style. For those who have tried and failed to play through the various versions of Metal Gear Solid, the digital graphic novel retelling of the Shadow Moses incident is a decent alternative. In fact, Hideo Kojima, the series' creator, decided to include the digital graphic novels of both Metal Gear Solid and Metal Gear Solid 2 into the Legacy Collection for this exact reason. Whichever option you decide to pursue, I highly recommend new players to engage with Metal Gear Solid in some way, shape, or form before they play through MGS2. If I had to suggest one option personally, it would definitely have to be playing through the original game. Bringing the difficulty down to a comfortable level and using guides such as the digital master book included in the Master Collection should be enough to get you through the game on your first playthrough. A setting found within the options menu of Metal Gear Solid 2 will drastically help you during your first playthrough. The option is called Quick Change, and by default it will be set to Unequip. By changing this from Unequip to Previous, you can now technically have two different weapons and items equipped at once. If you were to leave this option as it is by default, you'll notice that pressing the Weapon Equip and Unequip button, R2 by default on a PlayStation controller, leaves you with no weapon. Changing this to Previous mode enables you to have a weapon essentially saved in another slot, meaning pressing R2 now goes into your previously equipped weapon instead of having nothing equipped like before. This is massively helpful in the plant chapter of the game, in which you will be tasked with disarming a multitude of bombs scattered across the big shell. You can now have a dedicated weapon slot assigned to the coolant spray and the other to your weapon of choice, something such as the M9. This opens up a whole new world of possibilities in terms of advanced techniques. Things such as using the coolant spray to temporarily stop an enemy in their tracks and then quickly swapping over to a weapon to either hold them up or headshot them. Performing moves like this are made much easier by changing this one setting. While it may take a little while to get used to, there are so many portions of the game in which this specific setting helps you tremendously. Metal Gear Solid 2 introduces new movement options in the form of a roll for Snake and a cartwheel for Raiden. These can be used in a variety of ways, including to knock enemies down, to avoid enemy detection, and to avoid making noise on louder portions of terrain. Raiden's cartwheel also increases your movement speed when spammed due to its animation not having many recovery frames. As a way to help mitigate the time spent traveling across the big shell, make sure to incorporate this whenever you can. Performing this maneuver at the right time can also help open up new routes that are not possible without the few extra seconds cartwheeling allows you. Mastering the new movement options available to both characters will put you at a massive step ahead of most new players. Before we move on to the next tip, here's a little bonus tip, and it's also a shameless plug all at the same time. If you'd like to level up your Metal Gear game even more, with videos including shorts explaining how to deal with some of Metal Gear's most iconic bosses in under 30 seconds, make sure to check out and subscribe to the channel. I exclusively make Metal Gear content ranging from news updates to guides to boss strategies, and a lot more of that stuff is planned and on the way. Now let's continue to the next tip, and spoilers, it's a good one. Along with the new additions to movement come a plethora of new tools you can use to put enemies out of commission. The ability to raise your weapon in first-person view and also melee attack in first-person view are two massive additions to your arsenal. Performing a holdup is one of the newer and most useful ways you can incapacitate an enemy. It is done by sneaking up on an enemy undetected and raising your weapon without firing it. From here you can fire a weapon to put the enemy down, put them in a chokehold, or aim your weapon at their head in order to acquire their dog tag. Just keep in mind some enemies are a bit more brave than others. A somewhat more advanced technique you can use to save yourself some ammo is a first-person view groin punch on a held-up guard. This can be done by standing in front of a guard, making sure you're close enough to land a punch on them, and then aiming that punch in first-person view down to their groin. This will instantly knock a guard out. Another semi-advanced technique incorporates the new movement abilities we just went over in the previous section. You can fire a single round of your tranquilizer gun into an enemy, and before they are able to turn around, quickly roll or cartwheel into them to instantly knock them out. This is especially useful during portions of the game in which timing is strict and you cannot afford to stand around and aim your weapon in first-person view to line up a headshot. There are also new ways to distract enemies by firing silenced weapons in first-person view against a nearby wall to cause enemies to investigate the sound. Alongside all of the new attacks you can perform with weapons, Snake and Raiden can both use the terrain to their advantage by making use of rails the game allows you to hang off of. These can be used as both a means to avoid detection and also as a way to knock out enemies instantly. Both falling on top of an enemy and also pulling yourself up into an enemy will knock them out instantly. Whenever you see an opportunity to use a rail to your advantage, take it. Combining all of these newly added techniques will add even more options and ways to render guards useless as you attempt to infiltrate the tanker and Big Shell undetected. Metal Gear Solid 2 includes over 500 VR missions ranging from incredibly easy missions meant to ease new players into MGS2 all the way to painfully hard and potentially headache-inducing missions meant to test even the very best of players. As a beginner, however, you should focus your time on those introductory missions. Similarly to how I suggested players new to MGS1 should try VR training, I would highly recommend new players to try out some of MGS2's VR missions for Snake and Raiden respectively before heading into the main game. These missions are also a great way to practice all the things we've talked about in previous sections of this video. Feel free to play whichever missions you would like to and spend as much time here before starting the story mode of MGS2, but if you want some suggestions on which specific missions I would recommend to new players, the list is as follows. For Snake, sneaking missions 1 through 10 will provide you the very basic mechanics for sneaking around undetected. These missions are also the perfect place to practice Snake's role as a means to get past enemies and obstacles that would otherwise force you to wait for guards to patrol away or use some other slower method to succeed. Weapons mode handgun missions 1 through 5 are great for practicing your first-person view aim with the type of weapons you'll be using for the majority of the game. For Raiden, bomb disposal missions 1 through 5 will give you excellent practice with the quick change settings mentioned earlier in this video. These missions are also great at helping you practice holding enemies up and shooting various weapons both in and out of first-person view, all while remaining undetected. Elimination missions 1 through 5 also give you incredible practice with the M9 or SOCOM depending on your playstyle. You can even take these missions all the way to mission 10 if you think you need the extra practice. Keep in mind that while these missions imply you should be using weapons to eliminate enemies, any method you can use to incapacitate them works. Make sure you use and practice with all the tools you have at your disposal. Alternative missions Hold Up 1 through 5 teach you just how advantageous cartwheeling around as Raiden can be in terms of creating gaps in order to hold enemies up. Keep an eye out for instances in which Raiden's cartwheel benefits you. You also, as the name implies, get to practice holding enemies up in a fail-safe environment since the SOCOM given to you has 0 rounds in it. Once you've completed these VR missions, you should be more than ready to tackle the main game. MGS2's VR missions are probably one of, if not my favorite part about playing MGS2. If you've beaten the main story and want more MGS2, I definitely recommend revisiting VR missions and playing through all of them. That's going to be it for this video, guys. I truly, from the bottom of my heart, hope that you were able to learn at least one new thing from this video. That's always my goal when setting out to make videos like this, is hopefully you're able to take at least one thing away from this video that you did not know that will help you in your Metal Gear Solid 2 journey. As always, thank you so much for all the support on the channel, whether it's through liking, commenting, or subscribing. You guys have shown me a ton of support. We've already crossed over the 11K subscriber mark, which is insane. Thank you guys so much. If you're not yet subscribed, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I make at least one Metal Gear video just like this a week with a couple of shorts sprinkled in throughout the week as well. It would really mean a lot if you took the time to press the like button and also subscribe if you want to see more content like this. As always, you guys, I will see you guys in the next one.